What's up, y'all? You're watching Union Minded. I'm your host, Eric, and I'm starting our series that we talked about a few weeks ago that we're calling Contract Talk, where we break down the Inside Wireman's Agreement for Local 26 and gain an understanding of what it is our fundamental rights and agreement is with the contractors who we work for. It's very important that you have your wireman's agreement with you at all times so that you have a quick reference to what your rights are. Now, they're also available on the mobile app for members, and you can download the app or go to the website, log in as a member, and you can view the contract digitally. But sometimes you're not allowed to have your phone, so it's good to have your contract handy in your lunchbox. I keep mine in a Ziploc bag with my Constitution. I always have it on me so that I can reference it. It's kind of how you should go about your career as a journeyman. And sometimes the shoppies will look down on folks that keep their contract on them. The reason for this is various reasons, but one of the reasons is because shoppies like to ask you to do things that are not right. And the less educated you are on what is right, the better for them. So when they see you with your contract, they go, "Oh, he's one of those haul trash guys." Yeah. Don't listen to the shoppies. They are hitchhikers in this trade. Now, let's move forward. Inside, all right. I already talked to you about the table of contents on the intro last time, so real quick, the table of contents is going to give you everything that you need in the articles and what they pertain to. So we're going to skip through that, and we're going to start on page 1. Inside Wireman Agreement is the heading, and let's see what's in here. So we have agreement by and between the Washington, D.C. chapter, National Electrical Contractors Association, that would be NECA, and local union number 26 IBEW. It shall apply to all firms who sign a letter of assent to be bound by the terms of this agreement. Now, you may be thinking, what is a letter of assent? What does that even mean? A letter of assent is basically making the relationship between the IBEW and the contractor who is trying to hire journeyman electricians. It's an agreement that basically officializes the relationship and binds that contractor to the terms of the agreement. That's what a letter of assent is. As used hereinafter in this agreement, the term chapter shall mean the Washington, D.C. chapter, National Electrical Contractors Association, and the term union shall mean local union 26 IBEW. So from that sentence forward, on this document, they're not going to say the Washington, D.C. chapter, National Electrical Contractors Association anymore. They are just going to say chapter. But that means the contractor essentially that you're working for, because this binds also anyone who signs a letter of assent. Is that pretty clear? And then it's going to say union instead of local union 26. Saves on ink, but union refers to us, the journeymen that are in the field. This is an agreement between the contractors and the union, which is us. The term employer shall mean an individual firm. I'm sorry, let's go back. Let's backtrack just a second. The term union shall mean local union number 26 IBEW. So the term union is talking about us collectively. The term employer shall mean an individual firm who has been recognized by an assent to this agreement. So when they say chapter, they're talking about NECA. When they say union, they're talking about local 26. When they say employer, they're talking about the contractor that signed the letter of assent. And when they say employee or employees, they'll be talking about the worker or the workers that are covered by the terms and conditions of this agreement. So now we're clear on who this agreement is for, who it covers, and what the terms, when you read them, what they're talking about. So when you read chapter, they're talking NECA. When you read union, they're talking local 26. When you read employer, they're talking the individual contractor that signed the letter of assent. That would be your Free States, your Kelly Richards, your employers. When they use the term employee, they're talking about you and I. All right. So now we know the inside wireman agreement. We got the we got some language that we'll be seeing further down the line. Now we got fundamental principles. This agreement is based on the following set of fundamental principles affirmed by the parties hereto. That means everybody that signed the agreement, that's part of this agreement, they agree to these things. These are the fundamental principles of this agreement. Number 1, close contact and mutually sympathetic interests between employee and employer will develop a better working system, which will tend constantly to stimulate production while improving the relationship between the employee, the employer, and the community. So we understand that there should be a mutually sympathetic interest between the employee and the employer. Mutually sympathetic. That means your employer is supposed to be sympathetic to your needs as much as you're supposed to be sympathetic to their needs. In many ways, we call it 8 for 8. That's the common language for what we're really discussing here. You pay me my 8 hours of pay, I give you 8 hours of labor. But these the interest between employee and employer, that's also about your working. What does your work life look like? So you got to be. It's a mutually sympathetic relationship. Number 2. Oh, and within the community. That means the business model is supposed to also be beneficial to the community. Number 2, the right of employees and employer in local groups to establish wage scales and local working rules is recognized. It is understood that there is a right of employees and employers to come to a wage scale and working rules. And that right is recognized by the folks that agree to this. So any jobs you're on and are under this, they agree that there is a right for us to establish wage scales and working rules. Number 3, strikes and lockouts are detrimental to the interests alike of employee, employer, and the general public, and should be avoided. I agree with that. Strikes are detrimental, and they should be avoided. They absolutely should be avoided. They're also bad for the general public. It should be avoided. Where you place the onus on whose responsibility it is to avoid those things, that's key to understanding how we can move this entire economy forward, really. We harken back to the first principle, mutually sympathetic interest. We talk about wage scales, mutually sympathetic interest, and now you're talking about strikes. Well, we can avoid strikes when the relationship is mutually sympathetic. Now, let's move forward. Number 4, public welfare as well as the interest of the trade demands that electrical work be done by the electrical industry. That's a wonderful stipulation that they placed in here. The public welfare as well as the interest of the trade absolutely do demand that the electrical work is done by the electrical industry. Of course, it's beneficial to all of us. Number 5, the public interest is served. Hazard to life and property is reduced, and standards of work are improved by fixing an adequate minimum of qualifications in knowledge and experience as a requirement precedent to the right of an individual to engage in the electrical construction industry, and by the rigid inspection of electrical work, old and new. There has to be standards of installation. Later on in this contract, we'll talk about what workman-like installations are. There has to be standards, and so we have to hold each other to the highest standards. When we talk about craftsmanship, we got to hold each other to the highest standards, because there's an attitude in some where they just want to shit it in, and you can't see it from my house, and you're going to hear that talk when you get into the trade. Those are the lessons you learn how not to be. You don't do that. The only thing that speaks for you is your installation. And so it has to be of the highest quality, because you speak for an entire industry. You speak for your siblings around you that you're working with. When a stranger that doesn't know electrical walks into a room during a rough-in because they're part of the ownership committee or whatever, and they see your installs, they should look at it and be like, wow, this looks really good. Not, oh my God, what is that? It shouldn't look like a mess. All right, here we go. Number 6, agreements and understandings which are designed to obstruct directly or indirectly the free development of trade, or to secure to special groups special privileges and advantages, are subversive of the public interest and cancel the doctrine of equality of rights and opportunity, and should be contemned. Now that's an interesting principle to put in here, because agreements and understandings which are designed to obstruct directly or indirectly the free development of trade, or to secure to special groups special privileges and advantages, are subversive of the public interest and cancel the doctrine of equality of rights and opportunity, and should be condemned. I read that as we shouldn't be having little nepotism cliques within these contractors that we're working for, because it's those little cliques. They tend to single people out. They tend to treat people differently on the work site. Certain folks get to loaf around and do nothing all day and be elevated, while other folks are worked to the bone. And I think that can be described as a special privilege and advantage that's given to a special group through understandings that are designed that way. And so it's right here that should not be happening. That's how I read it. That's how I interpret it. Now, therefore, in consideration of the mutual promises and agreements herein contained, the parties agree as follows. And on the next episode of Contract Talk, we'll dig into Article 1. I'm going to take this slow because we need to understand what we're reading as we're reading it. And so we need to read it slowly, because this is not a Facebook post. This is not a simple read. It's legalese. It's confusing. The definitions that they use for the words that they use are rare in many instances, unless you're familiar with contract language. And so we need to be careful as we read this and interpret it the best we can. But get yourself a copy. If you don't have one, go to your union hall and ask for one, because by law they have to give you one. So ask for an inside wireman agreement, ask for your bylaws, and ask for a constitution. And we'll have a little study session, and we'll learn the stuff that they don't teach you in apprenticeship, like what the hell this thing's all about as far as your rights and your career as a journeyman. You do have rights. You do have basically a Bible that guides your work life and allows you to have guaranteed working conditions. And if they are broken down, there are ways to address that, because you're in a union. So let's learn together. All right. My name's Eric. You're watching Union Minded. I hope you found this video interesting, informative, entertaining. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not that entertaining, but we'll see you on the next episode of Contract Talk. Remember, the fight is not left and right. It's up and down. It's going to take solidarity to win always. Each one, teach one, get out there and reach one. And there is no union and can never be a union without you and I front and center, and leave the naysayers in the back. Peace.